in Hungary, but there are some findings even older than that. But really the organized Jewish life here in Hungary was probably only for the past 250 years. That's when they were really, a real exciting, vibrant Jewish community all over Hungary. Now, Hungary had a lot of very big rabbonim, very famous rabbis, wrote very famous rabbinic works. Also, Hungary also had the non-Orthodox world some very famous names. If I'm just going to mention Tivadar Herzl, who lived just across the street I look out of the window, I see the house, or at least where the house stood where he grew up, and also down the block he had his bar mitzvah. But really he wasn't really Hungarian. His language wasn't Hungarian, his language was German, and he spent his time in Vienna. Anyways, the Jewish life in Hungary was very, very, very vibrant, and one of the most famous rabbis here is the Chassam Sofer, the Khatam Sofer, from Bratislava, Prešborg, or Poznan. Some cities over here have 3 names. Why do they have 3 names? Because originally the people used German over here, and then it was then it has an Hungarian name, and then it has a Slovak name or a Romanian name. So a lot of cities have a few names. Now, the story of Hungary was that in 1869 there was a big split in Hungarian Jewry, and that's when the split became two major communities. One was the Orthodox community, and one was the Neolog community. Neolog is similar to conservative reform in the States. A lot of things are very religious. It used to be very religious, and a lot of things are very they don't care. So it's like something like a conservative reform. And that split was in 1869. It wasn't easy because the government only wanted to allow one Jewish community, and they wanted that there should be one big Jewish community, one president of the Jewish community, so the government would have a one point connection with one person. With that, they could cover all the Jews, and they didn't want that all the communities, everybody should be independent. But then, when it came to the point that everybody had to organize it under one umbrella, the Orthodox said, "I'm sorry, we cannot be under one umbrella because you're not committed to halacha, to Shulchan Aruch." So they tried to organize on their own, but they had to have the Hungarian king, the ruler, the monarch, had to okay it, Franz Joseph, and then the Hungarian parliament also had to vote it that not one Jewish community but 2 Jewish communities. The story goes that a few very prestigious representatives of the Orthodox community, rabbis, went to meet the monarch in Vienna. Now, he had a beautiful, nice room where he used to see guests, and that room used to call the Spiegelzimmer, the room of the mirrors, because all the walls all around were mirrors. And the story goes that they were very afraid. He says, "Who knows if the monarch is going to accept what we want to say, that we want to split." So the story goes that suddenly one of the rabbis looked across himself, and he saw somebody with a very long white beard, somebody very special. So he tells another rabbi, he says, "Listen, I'm convinced that we're going to have a success because you see that cross, that's probably Eliyahu Navi, Eliyahu the prophet. And so if he's here, we're surely going to have success. So the rabbi tells him, yeah, I also believe we have success, only things that you're seeing yourself in the mirror. Because he never looked in the mirror, so he didn't know how he looks like, and now he was very impressed of himself. Now, I always had heard this story, but like some 15 years ago, we went a delegation of rabbis from Europe to visit, to meet the Austrian president. So we came into this room, and he says, this is the room which we call the mirror room, and this is the room where the monarch always used to meet the guests. So I looked around, I said, hey, it's like the mirror room. This is the room where that story happened. And I saw myself in the mirror, and I was very impressed of myself. Anyway, so he was very impressed by the rabbis, and he allowed it, and then the parliament also allowed it. And it happened to be that the vote the parliament gave was on Purim. That's when they voted that they accepted the Orthodox can organize on their own. Since then, the Jewish community of Hungary was split into three. It was the Orthodox on one end, the Neolog at the other end, and in the middle was called what we call the status quo, which they were religious, but said we don't want to commit ourselves to this organization and other organizations, so they organized themselves into a non-organization, but they also organized themselves into a group. Anyways, since then everything, a lot of cities had two communities. Very few cities had three communities, but a lot of had two communities: Neolog and Orthodox, Neolog and status quo, or Neolog and status quo. It depends which part of Hungary. Till the First World War, the majority of Jews in Hungary were Orthodox, and a big part of those were Hasidic. Some were Munkache Hasidim, some were Belz Hasidim, Vizhnitz, Spinka, and a lot more. Now, after the First World War, in 1920, exactly 100 years ago, a few weeks ago was exactly 100 years ago, Hungary was on the wrong side of the World War, and after the World War finished, they decided that Hungary is too big, they have to split it up, because they have a lot of minorities, and those minorities don't belong into Hungary, so why are they part of the Hungarian state? And at that point, it's called the Treaty of Trianon. And at that point, they took away 2/3 of Hungary, and they gave it out. They always say they gave out charity, 2/3 of Hungary to the neighbors. Big part of it went to Romania, it was Transylvania. The Carpathian region went to Czechoslovakia. Some part went to Austria, some part went to Yugoslavia, like all over. And Hungary was left only 1/3 of it was used to be. And a lot of those communities, of the Orthodox and Hasidic communities, they found themselves on the other side of the border. At that point, the majority of the Jews left in Hungary were not Orthodox. I think it was like 60-40. So it was 40% were Orthodox, 60% not, because a big part of them were on the other side of the border. Now, between the two world wars, the trend within the Orthodox community was towards Hasidism. All the big yeshivot, in most of the big yeshivot in Hungary, if it was Papo or other ones, were Hasidic. So the students, the Bocherim that came out of there were Hasidic. So a lot of them went towards, a lot of communities became more and more Hasidic. Now, all this ended, unfortunately, in 1944, which was almost the end of the Holocaust already, but until 1944, the Jews were, they weren't too much bothered. Now, it's a little exaggeration that the Jews lived a good life beforehand, and compared to Auschwitz, they had a good life. But really, Hungary was the first country in Europe that had discriminative laws against the Jews. The first law, I think, was 1920 or 1920 something, which was called the numerus clausus, which said that the number of university students, doctors, lawyers in Hungary cannot be more than their percentage of the whole of Hungary. For example, if the Jews in Hungary, I think, were 5.5%, there cannot be more than 5.5% of university students Jewish, and not more than 5.5% doctors and lawyers, etc. So a lot of Jews lost their jobs, and a lot of young students, Jewish students, couldn't go to university. Some of them left Hungary and they went to, in Italy and other places to go to university, and some of them had to, look for other ways of living. So this was the first law against the Jews, and then
it's getting very choppy. Sorry to interrupt.
It hasn't changed for me, so I don't know if that's something that's just for your individual computer.
Listen, we have to understand one thing: the internet is a great thing, but when it gets a little shaky, we can't help it.
Rabbi, I can still hear you the same as before. So
okay, great. So that was the first Jewish the discriminative law against the Jews, and then in the 1930s, many Jewish laws. It's called the Jewish laws. It means the anti-Jewish laws were passed in the parliament. Very, very, very discriminative. Like the point where they couldn't own they couldn't own any certain land, different stores, etc., etc. It was very, very discriminative. Now, if the war would have finished at that point, the Hungarian Jews would have survived. Unfortunately, towards the end, 1944, they started. The Germans came into Hungary. They came into Hungary and they deported the Jews outside of Budapest. They call it the countryside. Were deported to Auschwitz. They were deported to Auschwitz, and at least 600,000 Jews, Hungarian Jews, were killed in Auschwitz or in other camps, forced labor camps, etc., etc. My immediate family means my father's side, my grandparents and their children. They got false papers. False papers. And hold on one second, it's driving me crazy. Sorry. So my immediate family, my grandparents, from my father's side, and their children, they all had false papers. So they left the ghetto and they survived for a while until they felt they were not safe with the non-Jewish papers outside of the ghetto. So some of them, for my father and some other ones, stayed. The non-Jewish papers was very dangerous. And my grandfather, my grandmother, and some of the children went into what's called glass house. It was like a glass company of some Jew. His name was Arthur Weiss. And I was there because it's a museum now. The place probably, I'm talking about the cellar, ground floor, and the first floor, probably 500, 600 Jews would have been able to stuff into there over there. And I think like 3,000 or 4,000 Jews went into there. It became like a part of the Swedish embassy. So everybody that was inside over there was saved. That's how after a while, my grandfather didn't feel safe. So he went into the glass house. Just an interesting anecdote. It was once in the middle of the night that my grandfather, passed by the front door. There was a guard over there, and he heard somebody begging that they should let him in. And the place was jam-packed. So my grandfather tells the guard, "Listen, one more person. What difference does it make? Let him come in." So he let him come in. Fine. Many years later, my sister's wedding. My brother-in-law's father gets up, says, he wants to say a few words. Says there was one night during the war, during the Holocaust, I ran away. I came to Budapest. I looked where I could I could hide. I went to the glass house, and the guard would not let me in. Then finally, one person from inside begged the guard to let me in, and he let me in. That's how I survived. And that was me. And the person that asked me to come in was Mr. Oberlander. So it happened so that, after so many years, they met, and my brother-in-law married my sister. And my brother wouldn't have been if my grandfather wouldn't have begged the guard to let him in. Anyways, my father still survived outside. After the war was over, was a great miracle that my grandmother and my grandfather and 10 children all survived. On my mother's side, they were deported, but also a big miracle that two trains, instead of going to Auschwitz, were a different direction. They went to Austria, to a place called Strasshof, where it was, let's call it forced labor, was very, very, very easy compared to other places. So from 18,000 Jews, 15,000 survived, which is a very nice number. Usually from the forced labor camps, I think 10-20% survived. And here, from 18,000, 15,000 survived. After the war, the Jewish communities tried to rebuild, but a lot of people felt that there's no chance over here, especially that the communism grew stronger and stronger, and people started leaving. So a big part of the Jewish community left between 1945 and 1949, 1950, and then the border was shut. Then there was 1956. There was a revolution, which the borders were open for a few weeks until the Soviet tanks came in and controlled again the place. And during those few weeks, many thousands of Jews left. And again, the Jewish community got much smaller. After 1956, most of the Jews in Hungary were left that were left in Hungary lived in Budapest, and very few in the countryside. Today, we have approximately 100,000 Jews in Hungary. Out of that, approximately 99,000 are in Budapest, and maybe 1,000 is all over Hungary. Now, then again, communism came back. During communism, the Jewish community didn't do too well. The synagogues were not closed, but since there was no Jewish schools really, so after a while there was nobody there who fill up the shuls, the synagogues. When we came here in 1989, there were still many synagogues operating, but it was almost exclusively old people, and no future for those synagogues. Matter of fact, many synagogues closed in the 1980s, in the second half of the 1980s, because there was nobody who should come there to pray. So we came here in 1989, and it was only the two of us, my wife and I. We didn't even have children yet, and we started working. After 31 years, Baruch Hashem, thank God, Chabad here in Budapest, besides me running the Beis Din, the Orthodox rabbinate, most of the rabbis here in Hungary today are Chabad rabbis, are Chabad trained rabbis. Most of us are in Budapest. We are 16 rabbis, most in Budapest. One of them is in Debrecen, outside of Budapest, the countryside, and one of them is in Miskolc. We have a school, a preschool, we have many synagogues here in Budapest. We have the biggest publishing house of Jewish books here in Budapest, or in Hungary, the biggest Jewish website in Hungarian. We print a weekly and a monthly magazine. We do, in a usual year, we'd have camp, etc. Now we have some day camp. Thank God that the COVID in Hungary didn't really arrive. We're not talking about the second wave, we're talking about the first wave. Didn't really arrive. It was very small. So after 10 weeks that the synagogues were closed, we finally opened. Many synagogues are praying indoors. My synagogue, we have a very nice size yard in front of our synagogue, so we do the prayers outside. In normal year would have more day camp, etc. This year it's a little scaled down because people don't feel very comfortable with it. Some of the rabbis over here are that came from the States or from Israel, mainly from Israel, but some of them are very local boys that came to learn with us. Then we sent them to Israel, and then they came back as rabbis or community leaders. The question always comes up, what's with anti-Semitism here in Hungary? And the answer is that I wish all of Europe would be like Hungary. Meaning the Hungarian government is absolutely 100% helpful in anything we need. They make sure that we should feel safe over here. And Baruch Hashem, the situation is not bad, although you will might have read different reports. I'm talking over here in the street. I have my son, my smallest, just turned 12. I never had a problem letting him go to school or to synagogue by himself, send a guard with him, etc. I never had such a thought because I never felt that it's dangerous. Thank God, and we pray that our situation should stay like this, and the Jews in France and in England and in Sweden and everywhere should at least have such a good situation. Now, some of the publications that we did is, for example, when I came here, I realized that the latest edition of the Jewish, the Siddur, the prayer book, was probably in the beginning of the last century. It's a very old, archaic Hungarian, and that's the only thing there is. So the young people could not relate to that language. The Hungarian language really changed a lot, especially that most of the Hungarian translations of the prayer books were done by for the Nalo community, and they had this idea. See, the question is, what does assimilation mean? Sometimes assimilation, for example, the United States, assimilation means people not being religious. In Hungary, in the beginning of the last century, assimilation meant to become Christian, or so a lot of the Jewish prayer books were translated and written like in language that it would remind, like Christian liturgy prayers. So for a person that takes that in hand, that prayer book today, it's like very strange. Like, why are we Jewish or not? Because that was assimilation in those years. Obviously, that assimilation finished by 1944 when the Hungarians proved to the Jews that they are not considered Hungarian, no matter what they do. But at least till then, this was the assimilation was to be like to make Judaism sound, or some people converted to Christianity, or at least people tried Judaism should sound like Christianity. So we made a completely new prayer book, weekday, Shabbat, holidays, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. We printed, 2 volumes of Talmud, commentary on the Bible, Rashi, and many more publications. Because if you can't only build on lectures that people have to attend physically. Not everybody could attend. Not everybody could attend for the same time. So you have to give them, read. And then when the internet came in, we were the first Jewish website in Hungarian, and we always try to do more and more. If it's written content, audio, video, etc. Now during the COVID lockdown, I started teaching all my lessons on Facebook. So every day from Sunday to Thursday, I have lessons on Facebook between 7 and 8. And besides that, we also had, services, prayers on Zoom, etc., etc. So, I was locked in to my house, but I was very busy. Thank God there are a lot of people, a lot of Jews interested in Judaism, and they tried, to learn, to study more about Judaism and get closer, become more, take up more of the Jewish laws and customs. But obviously it's not enough, because we're talking about 100,000 Jews, so work over here is still endless. Okay, these are just a few points that I wanted to say. And if you have questions, I'll be more than happy to answer. I guess different points that I didn't say, it could come up by the questions and answers.
Thank you.
Question.
Rabbi Oberlander, I want to first thank you before we go to the questions. For the questions, we have, just to keep in mind, there are 48 people 48 people in the Zoom right now. So if people can keep their questions short so that everyone can have a chance, everyone who wants. And also I think since we have so many people, maybe we should start off with those who have some roots in Hungary themselves or their family. If anyone has roots in Hungary and they have a question, otherwise we'll go to everybody else. So you can go ahead and unmute yourself if you know how to do that. And
yes,
go ahead.
My mother tongue is Hungarian. And my question, I come from Galanta, and all the story and Hatam Sofer is very familiar with me. And when I visit his gravesite. My question would be to Rabbi Oberlander is that which synagogue he davens or runs, what's the name of it, and where the name Oberlander comes from, what they adopted, because Oberlander were called a lot of Jews who lived up of Hungary.
Very good, very good. You proved that you're Hungarian. So
Thank you. Köszönöm. Köszönöm.
So the first answer to the first question is that my synagogue is it's called the Shas Chevra on the Vashvari Palutza.
Okay.
Okay. And second thing is our family is an Oberlander family because we come from the area of the Lake Balaton.
Oh, and that area was also called Oberland?
Yes.
We used to go to Kazinci. We lived there in 50s, 60s to buy kosher meat, if you know, or that doesn't exist anymore.
My father ran the kosher meat store and salami until 48, 49 when they left.
Yeah, but I am not that old, so I remember the 50s, 60s with my mother, rest in peace, used to go once a while to have a piece of salami as a treat because there was nothing in Galanta and the neighborhood, if you know what's the region.
Sure.
Thank you. And thank you for the explanation.
Anybody else?
What's happening at the Kosinski Yutza Shul now?
They still have prayers. The rabbi that used to be here left, so now they have I think every 3 or 4 weeks somebody flying in from Israel for a few days.
If we go out there today, we're supposed to see the history of
What?
But I like that.
I didn't hear anything. Mrs. Klein, did you want to say a question?
No.
But you're on mute. You're on mute, and I can't. For some reason, I'm trying to unmute you, and I'm not able to.
I wanted to know, there's no daily minyan anymore by the Kosinski Yutza?
I said they do have.
Where in the little shul on the side they do it in the base medrash?
Yes. Yes.
Do they use the big shul at all?
Sometimes during the summer. Sometimes during the summer.
Is the restaurant still there?
You mean the Hana Kosher Kitchen?
Yeah.
Is there, and we have next to it we have the Carmel,
He heard me, but
which is Fleischig,
Anton is still there.
and then the Tel Aviv restaurant, which is Milchig, and both of them are under under the hechsher of our base there. Of the base.
And there was a kosher bakery there in the neighborhood.
Also, I give the hechsher on that also.
Is the shchita done locally, or is it imported?
What?
The shchita, is it local or imported?
We have our own shechita for chicken, etc., and meat we import. But there is also some small shechita over here for meat also.
It's fascinating. Does anyone else have questions?
Could Rabbi Oberlander, could you tell us a little bit about the chinuch, how far it goes, and what do they do for Masifta and like a high school? Do they have to send them to Eretz Yisrael? What exactly happens there?
Yes, we have our school. Our school goes into bar mitzvah like 13-year-old, and then some of the kids, my own kids, whatever, we send them away to yeshiva. Since my brother-in-law is the chief rabbi of Russia, Rabbi Lazar, so my 2 daughters and 3 sons all went through. For the first few years, they were in Moscow or in the yeshiva or in the girls' school. Then they continued or in Israel or in the United States. So that's, but we also have some high school, but that's like a very basic, not yeshiva. It's not the yeshiva high school. It's just it's a basic high school, basic Judaism.
What's with the Dahaniutza shul?
Dahaniutza is just across the street from my window, and it still exists. You know, it's a very big tourist attraction. Just not this when there's COVID. Otherwise, you know, it's a very big tourist attraction.
Mm-hmm. Is there a minion there?
Very seldom.
Something.
Rabbi, somebody mentioned before about davening at the kever, the gravesite of the Chassam Sofer. Are there other kivrei tzaddikim, other grave sites where people go to daven as well?
Oh, sure. In the last few years, for example, a lot, you know, thousands of people travel from all over the world to the kever of Reb Shaila of Kerestur. Thousands of people come there. Go there, and then obviously there's the kever of the Yismach Moshe. Whoever knows, you know, the Teilbon, the Satmar Rabbi's great-grandfather, and there's a lot of different other famous kvarim. But probably the kever of in Reb Shaila of Kerestur is probably now the biggest.
Are they buried near each other, or?
No. For example, from Kerestur to the Yismach Moshe is probably 20-hour drive. In that area, there's many other.
The rabbi disappeared.
There's many other kvarim also.
I don't care.
Very interesting.
Rabbi Oberlander, ever go to Dunasardahai, Dunajska Streda?
We used to send boys over there for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur to Dunasardahai and to Galanta and a few more places. That was for many years we did it. And then finally the community in Bratislava decided they want to organize it. So we stopped organizing it. But for many years, we helped Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur.
Is there still that kosher nursing home by Lake Balaton? Up there where you could see Lake Balaton from the nursing home?
Don't think so, no.
How do young people meet their mates?
Well, I guess that's one of the places they meet.
The most kosher nursing home you will find is in Poznan, Bratislava, if someone is looking for it.
It could be. I'm not so familiar with the situation in Bratislava. A very good friend of mine, Rabbi Myers, he's the Rav over there.
Yes, I met him personally, and his daughter is married here in Chicago.
What's her name now?
I don't know. I just met Rabbi Meir for briefly, because I visit regularly. I visit the cemeteries regularly in Galanta, and I met Rabbi Meir.
Myers.
And there is a Chabad in Pieszczany. Pösztén?
Pösztén, yes.
Pösztén. How is your Hungarian? Where did you learn of it, Rabbi?
Yeah, both of my parents are Hungarian, so it was never foreign to me. But after 31 years, you could imagine that I learned some Hungarian. I also teach at an accredited course at law school and at Budapest University Medical School, Jewish medical ethics. So I had a chance of
the easy way to connect to your website and or where you publish the most?
My website is very simple, www.jido.com.
Okay.
Rabbi, for those of us who don't spell in Hungarian, how do you spell Jido?
Z like zebra, S like Sam, I, D like David, O.com.
Okay, so for all those who want to send you a thank you letter and show some support for the community in Hungary, they can reach you at that website.
Yes, You could write to me at info@jido.com.
Rabbi Oberlander, I want to thank you so much. It's been a terrific learning experience for myself, and I'm sure I speak for everybody. Really appreciate. We know that in Hungary right now it's almost 10:30 in the evening. So thank you so much for going out of your way and being so gracious with your time and your knowledge. And thank you for giving us such an informative and enjoyable lecture.
Thank you for the opportunity. I wish all of you should be very healthy but take care of yourself and be very careful.
And thank you, Rabbi Zheverovsky, for organizing it. Hopefully it's going to be more. We in Chicago, I am a Chicagoan, so we are not far from each other for West Rogers Park. So hopefully we can meet and talk or more connect with more Hungarians in Chicago area. But our connection to Hungary and Budapest is missing, whatever reason it's behind. Shkoyach.
My pleasure.
Well, everyone should stay tuned, and we're going to be sending out the next opportunity when we have another lecture coming up. We've been talking with some different rabbis from communities around the world, and we're working on scheduling the next ones. It's going to be hard shoes to fill, that's for sure, for Rabbi Oberlander. But there are lots of interesting and exciting Jewish communities around the world. So stay tuned for further updates from Chicago Mitzvah Campaign.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yashikah.
And take care, everyone. Be well.
Thank you.
In the meeting.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Rabbi J. Rabbi J.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Stay healthy and stay safe.